All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging into a super important accounting standard, one that deals with how companies report property they hold purely as an investment. We're talking about IAS 40.
Okay, so here's what we've got lined up. First, we'll tackle what I'm calling the property accounting puzzle. Then, we'll get a solid definition of investment property. After that, we'll cover how it gets on the books, look at the two big measurement models, and wrap up with what happens when things change.
So first things first, the property accounting puzzle. Let's really get into why we even need a special standard for this stuff.
Okay, so just picture this for a second. A company owns its own headquarters, a factory where it makes stuff, and a building that it just rents out to other people. I mean, they're all buildings, right? But they do totally different things. So the big question is, should they all really be treated the same way on the balance sheet? It seems kind of weird if they are.
And here's where we get to the core of it. The standard basically says it all comes down to one thing: purpose. Why do you own it? An owner-occupied property, that's a tool. It's part of the machinery of your business, generating cash flow along with everything else. But an investment property, that's a whole different beast. It's designed to generate its own cash flow all by itself, either through rent or by just going up in value. It's an investment, not a tool.
Okay, so the solution to this puzzle is to give these properties their own special category. And that brings us right to our next point, actually defining investment property.
So here's the official definition straight from the standard. And really, it couldn't be clearer. It's not about the physical building itself, it's about the intention. Are you holding it to earn rent? Are you holding it because you think its value will go up? Or both? If the answer is yes, and you're not using it in your own business, then boom, it's an investment property.
And the standard even gives us some really helpful examples. For instance, a piece of land a company's just holding on to for the long term, betting that it's going to be worth a lot more someday. Or maybe they have land and they haven't even decided what to do with it yet. A building that you own and lease out is the classic example. And even a vacant building you're planning to lease out, or a property you're actively building to use as an investment property in the future, all of that counts.
Now, just as important is what isn't an investment property. You see, a property that you plan to sell as part of your normal business, like a home builder, that's just inventory. That's a whole different standard. And of course, your own headquarters or factories, that's owner-occupied property. Property your own employees live in? Nope. And this last one is a bit technical, but property you lease out to someone else under a finance lease also doesn't count. So yeah, the lines are actually pretty clear.
Okay, but here's where you might get tripped up. What about something like a hotel? I mean, the company owns it, and it's definitely earning income from it, right? So is that an investment property or is it owner-occupied? It's a really good question.
Well, the standard tells us it all boils down to how significant the services are that you provide along with the space. Think about it. If you own an office building and you provide security and some maintenance, that's a pretty small part of the whole deal. It's still an investment property. But a hotel, the services are the main event. You're providing cleaning, reception, maybe a restaurant. That's a massive package of services. It's so significant, in fact, that the whole thing is treated as an owner-occupied property because you're in the business of hospitality, not just renting out space.
All right, so we know what an investment property is. The next logical question is, how do you actually get it into your financial records?
Well, it's a two-step process. The first step is recognition. Basically, you have to be confident that you're going to get some economic benefit from it in the future, and you have to be able to reliably figure out what it cost you. If you can't do both of those, you can't recognize it. Then, step 2 is initial measurement. This is where you actually put a number on it.
And this is a really important point. The initial value isn't just the price tag on the building. You've got to include all the other costs that were directly tied to buying it. We're talking about things like legal fees, property transfer taxes, all those extra costs that add up. You roll all of that together to get its true initial cost.
Okay, so the property is on the books. Now comes the really interesting part, because now the company has to make a huge decision, a choice that's going to impact its financial statements for years. And here it is, the big fork in the road from IAS 40. A company has to choose one of two models, the fair value model or the cost model. And this is key, whatever they pick, they have to use it for all of their investment properties. You can't mix and match. And believe me, this choice makes a massive difference in how things look.
So let's break down these two models because they are fundamentally different. With the fair value model, you're basically updating the property's value to whatever it's worth on the market right now, at the end of each year. And any change, whether it's a gain or a loss, goes straight to the income statement. It's very dynamic. The cost model, on the other hand, is the old school approach. You keep it at its original cost, and then you just chip away at that value over time with depreciation. Much more stable, but maybe less real.
And you can see here just how much those paths can diverge. In year one, they both start at the same place, the initial cost. But after that, the fair value number could go up, could go down, it follows the market. Meanwhile, the cost model number just starts a slow, predictable march downward as you depreciate it year after year.
The standard itself isn't exactly subtle about which way it's leaning. This quote here basically says that if you're already using the fair value model, switching back to the cost model would probably be a step in the wrong direction. The standard setters are pretty much telling you that moving towards a market-based value is better for everyone.
So a company picks its model and everything's set. But what if the reason they're holding the property changes? What if it's no longer an investment? Let's get into what happens when things change.
You absolutely can reclassify a property, but it is not something you do lightly. The standard is really strict on this. You can't just have a meeting and say, hey, let's call this an owner-occupied property now. No way. You need cold, hard evidence that there's been an actual change in how that property is being used.
And here is a textbook example of what that looks like. Let's say a company has been using a building as its own office. Then they decide to move into a fancy new headquarters. What do they do with the old building? They lease it out to another company. That lease agreement, that is your evidence. The moment that happens, the use has changed, and the property gets transferred from owner-occupied to investment property. And what about the end of the road for the property? Well, once it's sold, or if it's just permanently taken out of use with no hope of future income, you have to take it off your financial statements. It's gone. And of course, any profit or loss you make from selling it gets reported right away.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? It's that classification is everything. That single decision, is this a tool for my business or is it a standalone investment, changes the entire story. It dictates the rules you follow and fundamentally shapes the financial picture you present to the world.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. If the fair value model gives everyone the most current, most economically true picture of what an asset is worth, why on earth does the cost model still exist as an option? Why let companies stick with a historical number that arguably becomes less relevant with every passing day? Something to think about.